So I've titled my talk today, Education Scholarship from a Should to a Must, because I think it's commonly felt that the criteria and expectations of those engaged in education leadership are growing every year, and for some that's a very daunting and intimidating prospect. My goal today is to convince people that much of what is done in many programs and educational activities really does count as scholarship as long as it's viewed in the right way, and to try to make it easy for people. So why do people get engaged in education activities in the first place? And I think there's a fair bit of evidence that would suggest that most people who do it find it a very rewarding experience. They enjoy being part of the discussion, part of the advancement of a field, and they find it a very stimulating environment in which to practice. Most people who engage in academic practice have the perception that were they engaged simply in clinical activities, that they would be missing something, that they would be deprived of some growth opportunities and opportunities to engage in discussion with like-minded and sometimes not like-minded peers. The other reason is that there's certainly an expectation that groups of educators, usually defined by their clinical practice environment or their institution, are collectively responsible for advancing the field in some way, shape, or form, whether that be in new curricula or new research advances, development and advancement of theory, or just the dissemination of interesting ways of doing things. These are obligations that are usually seen as collective group obligations, but within the group, every individual will be expected to contribute something that aligns with their area of interest and expertise. Scholarship creates profile and legitimacy for people. If you're seen as an expert in a field or somebody who's forward-thinking, then that adds credibility to your contributions to the discourse, to the teaching that you do, to the curricula that you develop, and so on. One of the things that's encouraging for me is the notion that scholarship begets scholarship. Doing a project and doing it well is often a springboard to other things, such as publications, invitations to give talks where you find out what other people are doing and have an opportunity to build on what they're doing and translate your own discoveries into a different environment. People engage in scholarship to deal with problems that they have, and this is probably the most common way that educators and teachers can get involved in scholarship. And I'll have a slide a little bit later to demonstrate how this may happen. But essentially, physicians are largely problem solvers. We encounter problems in our day-to-day lives, and once in a while we actually have the energy, the ambition, and the wherewithal to try to tackle that problem. But all too often, we do it and we solve the problem, and the only people that ever find out about it are the people that are immediately involved in our own curricula and our own programs. And one of my major arguments here is that we should value those contributions and look for ways to disseminate those and allow others to benefit from our own problem-solving activities. We can derive some satisfaction in the thought that the problems that we solve result in better educational experience for other people and improvement of programs. And really, if we're embedded in an academic environment and we encounter problems all the time, is there not some responsibility for us to use that opportunity to advance the field and to solve problems? Because otherwise, other people are just going to have to do it for us. So thinking about what it really means to be involved in scholarly activity, I like to think of the following two brief definitions. The scholarly method is conceptualized as letting the work of others inform what you do. So you should use evidence to make decisions about how you carry out your day-to-day activities, whether they be clinical, educational, or something else. But on the other side, scholarship itself is letting what you do contribute to the knowledge in the field. So it ends up being a two-way street. You can engage in evidence-based practice, but really contribute very little evidence to the body of literature yourself. Or you could do the opposite. You contribute lots and lots to the body of literature, but do very little different on a day-to-day basis in your own practice. And ideally, obviously, one would do both. One would be evidence-informed in what they do, and they would generate new evidence to help those around them. One of the most classic definitions of scholarship arose in 1990 when Boyer came up with this definition, when he looked at the broad roles of the academic faculty in universities. We conclude that the work of the professoriate might be thought of as having four separate yet overlapping functions: discovery, integration, application, and teaching. And this was one of the first contributions that really codified the breadth of what scholarship really means, when in fact it was commonly regarded as mostly research in the past. This really opened the door to other things that faculty do, and in particular for us, clinician educators do most of these things. They discover new things through research, they bring in other ideas and apply them in a practical setting, they look for ways to integrate theory into practice, and obviously they take pride in good teaching. One of the key aspects of scholarship and one of the key themes of this talk is the notion of dissemination. There is a baseline expectation that people innovate and do great things, but there's also an expectation that they tell the world about it so other people can benefit. And the 3 Ps of dissemination are ideally that it be public, that it be peer-reviewed, and that it really be a platform from which others can build. So if that's what scholarship is, then in 1997, Glassick advanced things a bit further and really set the criteria for what makes good scholarship. And they're outlined here. It should have clear goals, so just like a research question should be precise, the goals of any intervention or innovation should be relatively clear. One should be adequately prepared. They should embed their innovation in ambient theory, use previous people's work to inform the work that they're about to do. Obviously, the methods need to be appropriate. The design needs to match the goals, and the methods really should be designed in collaboration with other experts in the field, whether they be quantitative or qualitative. The intervention should have some embedded type of evaluation or assessment so that we know that what was done actually made a difference. And ideally, people will look back on what they did and comment and enter into discourse about how things might have been done differently or better, or how people that are looking to take this forward might consider designing things in a certain way. And obviously, it behooves the person that's telling the story to do so in an effective way. So when we actually look at what we do as educators, it's pretty easy to see that the opportunities for scholarship arise all around us. And just a number of examples I've put on the screen here that range from teaching every day at the front line to individuals and groups, all the way through curriculum development, interesting innovations, to what would traditionally be seen as inquiry-driven research. And most educators I know are involved in any or all of these things almost on a daily basis. So thinking about it from the lens of a clinician educator, the opportunities arise in multiple different ways. And in the previous definitions of research, one would usually start with an observation and then develop a hypothesis and then come up with some sort of method to address or prove that hypothesis. Whereas for the clinician educator, I propose that the initial step may arise in multiple different ways, as listed on the top line here. So somebody might identify a need. They may generate a hypothesis, they may have an idea about a way to do something better, or they may make an observation that is of interest to them and something that they want to pursue. Then they look at existing practice, knowledge, theory, what's already out there, who knows about this, who could I talk to about this, and maybe the solution is already there. But if it isn't, that's when a clinician educator gets really excited, because then they have the opportunity to design, implement, evaluate, and eventually disseminate a new innovation or advancement in the field. So what does all this mean for you? I think it's pretty clear in my mind that most clinician educators are already engaging in scholarship in some way. Most of us are quite scholarly in the sense that we do take an evidence-based approach to what we do, and most of us are quite creative, innovative, solve problems, and do new things all the time. And the question in my mind is, why doesn't the world know about some of the great work that clinician educators are doing? So my view is that a CE should look at all new ventures as an opportunity for scholarship. Think ahead a few steps and don't just do it, but do it in a scholarly way and in a way that will allow it to be disseminated with confidence. And try to remain engaged in the scholarly educational activity that's happening in the community around you, because in order to be evidence-informed, one must first be aware, and in order to be scholarly, one must be engaged to know how to effectively disseminate innovation.